So, on to the ACC and their media days underway now. Jim Phillips addressed today, and obviously not people aren't as feverish after Jim Phillips as they would be after George Kliavkoff, as we saw on Friday, but he does have several big issues to get to. The biggest of which is that, in the spring, I wouldn't call it an attempted coup, but you saw the first steps of teams trying to find out what their real value is or what their value could be in the new world of college football and trying to figure out how to get out of the infinity contract that they apparently all signed. So that was something that happened. And this is the first time that he's really had to address it in the public sphere of media days. He said, we all saw what happened in the springtime, but the group has come together in a way that demonstrates they want to work together to find solutions. So he's painting a rosy picture, Craig. And here's the thing. Right now, he's got 13 years of a rosy picture he can continue to paint. And I say this as someone who's been here in Big 12 country for a long time and your whole life. These are like the first, this isn't the shot heard around the world or anything when it comes to ACC realignment. But these are the first things that start to happen that if you can't figure out a way to make your league more valuable, that when the time comes where people can afford to leave and get out of contracts and negotiate these things out, these are the things that you have to be aware of down the line.
Yeah, I think if anything, these last couple of years have been a big wake-up call for maybe folks like himself who thought, we're under a contract for the long term. We don't really need to worry about our backyard all that much right now. We can wait on this. And it's like, nuh-uh, you better take care of what you can while you can. And look, I still think that contract's a pretty big albatross for any teams. I know that, they can try to test that, and I'm sure there's theories out there that at some point they will. I imagine they will before the 13 years is up. I just can't foresee a situation where somebody doesn't try to test that bad boy, right, and take a lockpick to it. But as for right now, they are under contract for a very long time, and there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of wiggle room, at least for the moment. Now, I'm sure for especially realignment heads that this will be like the story now for the next 10 years. I don't have as much interest in a daily basis discussing this for the next decade, sorry, but on occasion, like when he speaks, and yeah, it's worthwhile to kind of see what's being bandied about. And in this case, I think that he acknowledges that they had to deal with some issues, but that now it appears after some concessions and after some discussions that everything's all quiet on the Western Front for at least the time being, and they can move forward. And, I think, for as much as the Big 12 wants to fly the flag as the number 3 conference and is trying to do that, the ACC might be the most strongly positioned, and I don't even know if it's might be.
Currently, they're third. Yeah. But I think that jockey's a little bit, in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So,
but right now they're third. The length of their contract, but the money part is obviously the part that's the bad number in the equation, that they have to kind of, figure some things out as far as that goes for the long term to be as stable as they want it to be. But yeah, in the short term, near term, there might be a little rattling of the cage here and there. There might be, some booster club president that speaks up about Florida State in a meeting or something that goes viral, and those kind of things are probably still going to occur. And certainly the debate about what could happen is going to be that's never going to end, because people love discussing realignment and scenarios, and especially now I think with what Florida State and the what do they call them, the
hateful eight, I don't know, whatever.
I know it's not Four Corners. That's just branded into my brain now at this point. But whatever that group, the big, I forget.
The Magnificent Seven. The Magnificent Seven.
I was thinking Sinister Six, like a Spider-Man. Yeah. The Magnificent Seven. I'm sure we're not done hearing them talk, but for right now, I don't think there's any looming threat that suddenly they're going to break off and there's going to be 4 headed to the SEC. I think we're pretty far away from that as far as July of 2023 goes. Now, again, I'm sure there will be things that pop up, but a looming threat, no. And if anything, I feel like we've seen now more and more, at least I have on my feed, talk about, and this was maybe just a last night thing, I don't know, but I saw a handful of tweets about this, and Jim Williams, I think, was one of those that was retweeting it or something, but it'd be a really good idea is if the ACC and the Pac-12 got together in a scheduling alliance, or if the Big 12, now we're back to alliance talk, because I think that's just sort of the way the wind blows. But yeah, I mean, the ACC, I feel like address things head on, but also acknowledge that there's still some work to do when it comes to the happiness level of all of their schools.
Yeah, I I don't know if I ever really believed that I thought like, oh, that's a good idea to have a scheduling alliance and make sure you have some nice games, and even though you might have a year or so where you have kind of a boring non-con schedule, at least it's not going to be 5 years for every school between fun non-conference opponents. Like, you're going to have those things. But, yeah, I never really believed that was going to happen. Here's what else he said. Jim Phillips said the league's partnership with ESPN is very strong. ESPN and the ACC are completely motivated together to generate additional dollars. He said the league has met with multiple TV consultants and shouldn't feel bad about being third consistently, and believes they remain more than capable of competing for national championships. In football and basketball, you're talking about combined about 6 schools, but that's fine. That's about what most people have. There's not, there's not like the Big 12 in basketball probably has 5 schools that could reasonably win a national championship coming into this year, if they got hot at the right time. But
which is weird because are you including like Texas in there?
Yeah. I mean, right now this year, and then that goes over the SEC in a year. But they probably have 1 in football right now that I could see, and even then, that's a stretch in my mind.
In basketball, they've got some teams that can legit win it, and they've done that. Baylor and Kansas here most recently, Tech playing for 1 here recently. I mean, they were knocking on the door. Football, I mean, let's just exclude OU and Texas because, I mean, it's just a 1-year rental now at this point. But, I mean, TCU proved they can get there. They also proved there's a long way to go to be on the mountaintop. And there's probably, I would think in the new league, the champion, so to speak, or, K-State obviously was very good, but they weren't national championship level.
No.
So I think maybe a team, I don't know about every single year, but most years there will be a team, but they're not going to usually have 3 contenders, or anything along those lines.
And I would say the ACC in basketball has, Duke, North Carolina, and Louisville, and Louisville had the worst year in their, forever, but that's a school that's going to always put revenue and things behind, resources behind basketball as a basketball school. But Duke, UNC are always going to be in the conversation for national championships. In football, it's Clemson and FSU. We'll see about anybody else. Because
I think it stops there. I don't think you can give Miami the rub still and just say they're competing just because they're Miami, because clearly they're not quite at that level anymore. So no, I mean, North Carolina on any given year may make some noise or someone along those lines. But yeah, I mean, Clemson, you feel pretty like Clemson they're suddenly like a sleeper pick again, sort of. I mean, they're not being talked about, I feel like, very much at all.
Which I don't like. I think people need to talk about Clemson and Garrett Riley and Will Shipley and all these things they have really good going for them. I'm sure it's different on the East Coast or something, but I just feel like I don't read a lot about Clemson.
FSU's
the hot team in the ACC now. Like, they're transfer portal and Jordan Travis and 10 wins last year and crawling up from the ooze kind of a thing.
That's understandable.
We'll wait and see. And here's another thing that he had to discuss was that he was the athletic director at Northwestern before he was the president of the ACC, and he said, "This is a very difficult time for the Northwestern community, and my heart goes out to any person who carries the burden of mistreatment or has been harmed in any way. During my 30-year career in college athletics, my highest priority has always been the health and safety of all student athletes. As you know, with this matter in litigation, I'm unable to share anything more at this time," and that he would vigorously defend himself. That's... and he's going to be in that for a while. I mean, that's how it's just going to be. His name's going to come up. And we don't know. I mean, the supposition by, the investigation was that nobody really knew anything and that they should have known something, which is why it's a problem. So we'll see what happens down the line when these lawsuits and things all come about Jim Phillips and what his part or not part in any of that may or may not be.
Yeah, I mean, he had a pretty lengthy time up at the podium, and that's how he chose to wind it on down. And I think he, had a respectful message. He didn't dwell on it, but he made sure what his position was clear, and that's, where his focus has always been. has been for, I think, almost in its exact words, the health and safety of student athletes, that being the utmost priority. So, I think it was probably a good idea to just, put something out there and make his case clear. But, yeah, I mean, anybody attached over the last few years, I feel like, prepare yourselves to get brought up probably in some form or fashion if you're related heavily into the athletics department, because it does feel as though that story is just gaining steam and not, dying down by any means. And so there's going to be a lot of names mentioned and a lot of things mentioned. And I don't know what the end result is for Northwestern other than just them having a bunch of lawsuits and having seen, not a totally similar situation by any means, but a loosely similar situation as far as just, something brewing under the surface that clearly came as a shock in some form or fashion. The majority of supporters and even administrators, that's an ugly thing to have to deal with. You go into the guts of the whole system and, start from scratch in some ways and, tear some things up. And you got to do a lot of work to heal and to, gain trust and all those types of things. So my heart definitely goes out to everybody involved there. Obviously that was, on the side of good or just not knowing. And I know there are some people that you should have known. It's your job to know, like Pat Fitzgerald or whatever, but there are going to be people that are probably fingers pointed at them that really, I mean, like, how are they supposed to know? So you can't just run over everybody with a bus that's just loosely attached to Northwestern, but I don't blame him for wanting to speak out there at the end. And, it'll all come out in the wash, I'm sure. But however long that takes, I don't know. And so I really hate it. I've said this every time. I hate it, obviously, most for those directly affected. But, from a stupid sports standpoint, or just from knowing how most college fans are of, yes, you have the stereotype of the win at all cost, and there are definitely those elements of people that exist. But there are also, I think, the majority, when you take the rah-rah out of it, majority of people just love their university and the community that it brings and the family that it means to them. And to see your family hurting like this and really having a deep wound opened up, it's a tough thing, man. And then you're going to have football right around the corner, which is supposed to be the time that, everybody waits on to celebrate and have all this spirit. And it's just going to be different for Northwestern this year, regardless of how little they won last year or whatever. It's going to be a tough season and a long season, I would imagine, to get through for them. So, that continues on. All
right. So James Crepea coming up next.
One more thing. Yeah. Notre Dame. Did you see his comments on Notre Dame?
I did not.
Okay, yeah. He talked about Notre Dame as well. And obviously there's a ton of conversation around Notre Dame, as there always is, and whether or not they will ever join a conference. And Jim Phillips was asked about that, and he said that they've had a lot of conversations with Notre Dame, and he basically let it be known that right now they're more independent-minded, and that they don't appear to be, a team that's like looking to join up with a conference, but, he's let them know and they know full well that they've got a spot in the ACC basically anytime they want it. And I would imagine that, most conferences would probably, have a similar reaction to that as well. So, yeah, I mean, he touched on the Notre Dame topic and said that, they're all ears if something were to ever pop off and they would be interested in linking up and becoming a full-fledged member. But he said I mentioned they had a lot of conversations. They value their independence. I think they feel strongly that it will continue well into the future. Speaking of Notre Dame's Indy status, if they ever desire, they know we would welcome them with open arms. But I think I can't speak for Jack Swarbrick right now and Pete Bebequa in the future, or Father John Jenkins, but I think it's been a healthy relationship both ways for the ACC and Notre Dame. Their sports other than football, I think, have thrived in the ACC. They enjoy the academic prowess the ACC brings, but they've been pretty clear about their desire to stay independent, so I don't see that changing anytime soon.
No, like Pete Bebequa is an executive with the company that they have their TV deal with. So